The number of photos I took in 2025 compared to the number of photos that were actually reasonably good is ridiculous. Welcome back to Shoot for Meaning. Today we're going to talk about the most important photos we shot in 2025. As we close out this last year, we found that we learned quite a bit about ourselves as photographers, and we thought we'd share those things with you. So to begin, we're going to go over our top 3 most important photos that we made in 2025. We're going to throw in some honorable mention at the end and tell you guys why they were important to us. And to begin us, we're going to talk about Satara's first photo, her first selection from 2025 called...
It's called Shadows of the Sun. This photo was taken in Antarctica on the Antarctic Peninsula, I believe January of this year, so the first photo. It has a lot of personal value for me because it holds in it our 7th continent, so all 7 continents. That was our last one. Huge bucket list moment. And also it has Nikhil and my dad, and they're doing something very much that is their personality. They're shadowboxing, which helps with the name. I chose to spell Shadows of the Sun with an O instead of a U because Nikhil is dad's son. Yeah, what do you think of this photo?
Oh, I love it. It's compositionally sophisticated. It's got a lot of elements that are really cool to me. But I'd actually like to hear more about what visual techniques you used to make this photo compelling, and how did you set it up, and why do they work?
The setup was fairly simple. I actually had no idea it would turn out this way. In real life, we could barely see the clouds. It was kind of just hazy. I was hoping for a silhouette, and we got these really dramatic clouds, which I was not expecting at all. The interesting is all of the photos around it that I took at the same moment, none of them had the clouds. And I have no clue why this one did, but I'm really glad it did. I feel like it adds a lot of balance, and I did crop it a little bit intentionally to add to that a little bit of asymmetry and a little bit not. The silhouette made me feel like Dad and Nikhil were kind of blending into the land, kind of coming out of the land, which I tried to capitalize on in post, doing a little bit of black point and just higher contrast. I don't usually shoot landscape because I value people in photos, and I got both in this one, which made me really happy. I don't normally get to see both. And then of course the black and white makes it feel a little bit alien, a little bit foreign, which kind of alludes to our adventure and all of the things that we do that are not quite normal.
That's cool. Really good use of contrast and silhouette. What do you think you learned about this photo, and what matters to you about making photos?
I realized that, well, I knew that I valued people in photos, even before this photo, but this photo helped me realize that I could capture a bigger picture kind of beyond people, specifically landscapes, like I said, while still having what I care about to kind of compromise my mom. Mom always says that she wishes I took more landscapes because they're pretty. She likes color. Of course, this one has no color, but that's okay. Just a little bit of compromise between what I like to shoot and what's fully happening.
Okay. What do you think making this photo might influence you to do more of or differently in the future?
Since it was early in the year, I think it's already influenced my photography. I definitely started leaning towards black and white a little bit more, which you will see in the next 4 photos. Silhouettes I've been using a lot more also in the next couple of photos. I really liked the kind of anonymous feeling of silhouette and the defined lines, so that's definitely changed how I look at light a little bit. I definitely have been shooting into light more than with the light.
Right. Interesting. Okay, cool. And the last question for you before we move on to the next photo. What about this photo is meaningful to you that you can't see?
Again, the 7th continent, the bucket list, you can't exactly tell it's Antarctica. And also just Nikhil and Dad being playful. You know, a lot of parents don't do that. And I think that's a really valuable part of our family. Can you tell me about your top photo, your first photo?
Yeah, so this is also in Antarctica. It's of you and Nikhil looking out over the bay in St. Andrews. Actually, it's called St. Andrews Bay on South Georgia Island. It's important to me because for 2 reasons. One, it's of us doing something that we, especially your mom, dreamed of doing, which is landing on the 7th continent, just like you talked about in your Antarctica photo. And it's also about life. And I think there's kind of this parallel or, I don't know, integration of the teeming life of these hundreds of thousands of penguins and you as our kids, and the adventures and lengths we go to see these kinds of amazing things in the world. I really like Nikhil's hand motion, which kind of tells the story of discovery and seeing new things. I think is a great little, maybe that one thing in the photo that really makes the photo for me. So that's its meaning. And then as far as the visual technique, it was one of the few landscape photos in which I felt like I was able to use layering to an interesting effect. You can see that in the front there's out of focus rocks, which is the layer that you all are standing on. But the layer that is in focus is the next one, which is where the penguins are standing. And then you have a layer of ocean and then the layer of sky. And because I'm shooting telephoto in very high aperture, it compresses the perspective, the depth of field, and it looks pretty flat. It's not entirely flat, could have made it flatter, but it's got this in-between depth of field layer effect and also flattened to almost a 2D image, which I think is pretty interesting and brings you, your brother, closer to the penguins and puts the emphasis on life. Actually, is what this photo represents to me.
How'd you set this photo up, and how did that help you bring out those visual techniques that you were talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the setup really was to wait for other people to leave the frame, because I wanted the simplicity of and the symbolism of just you and your brother looking out over the penguins, which is, of course, something as a parent we always try to do. And then, like I mentioned with the telephoto, I had to step back. I don't remember what focal length I was shooting at here, but it was probably somewhere in the range of 300 to 400 millimeters. So to get you that small in the frame, I needed to move back and set my aperture very small in order to get the depth of field to be very deep, because penguins, as you can see, are very far away. The front edge of the bay comes right up to the bottom of the cliff that you're standing on, or the mountain that you're standing on, but it extends way off into the distance, as you can see. And so I really needed to increase the depth of field by using a smaller aperture in order to keep all of the penguins in focus and really show how many penguins there really are. And of course, because I had to step way back, there were a lot more opportunities for other people to walk through the frame. So I had to wait, and that's sort of something that you do as a photographer. You have to wait, and it paid off.
Do you think this photo has changed how you take other photos, or if it will in the future?
Yeah, I think it has, because I learned that I can include characters in a landscape photo in a meaningful way. I used to shoot landscape photos for the landscape, and I found that usually what would happen is the characters that I would place in the frame, they were too small, or they were doing something uninteresting, and they didn't really add a whole lot to that shot. And so the shot became about the landscape, and I tended to have to choose between a landscape shot or some sort of portrait/action shot that were really about the characters, as opposed to what this photo I think is able to do, which is combine the importance of the characters and the landscape to create an interaction between the two and show a relationship. And that relationship here is, for me, it's about discovery and awe.
Yeah, I think I can definitely see that, especially in Nikhil's hand, like you said. What about this photo has some sentimental value that isn't visual?
Oh, that's not visual. Yeah, great question. This photo, like a lot of photos in Antarctica, it removes one of the key sensory elements, which is sound. It was so loud, you probably remember.
It was very loud.
It was very cacophonous. So we had 200,000 to 300,000 mating pairs of king penguins, which are big, and they sing and they call nonstop. So this photo, what it doesn't include is the singing chorus of hundreds of thousands of birds. But I still hear it when I see this photo. I don't know if you do, but that is burned in my memory.
In terms of sensory elements from this photo, I think I remember the smell.
Yes, a lot of pooping penguins.
Pooping penguins.
Mhm.
And then you get the updraft on the mountain, and it's not pleasant.
So thankfully, maybe not thankfully, the photo removes that. Maybe there should be a button that allows you to turn that on or off. This next one is yours. What is it about, and why is it important to you?
So this photo is a picture of one of my friends. We were on a caving trip, and to me it reminds me of adventure and friendship and perseverance, because this cave, while you can't really see it, it's a I think 150 feet deep into the ground.
Wow.
Waterfalls 360 degrees around you, water flowing through the middle. You have to climb through wet waterfalls to get back out. And me being the photographer of the group, I had to go in first. Well, that's not true. I asked to go in first so that I could get photos of everyone, because, you know, I might as well get photos of everyone, and I didn't want to sit around. So I went in, I took a bunch of photos. This one was by far my favorite, and I got out about 5.5 hours later. I was soaking, I was cold, and one of my coaches actually told me that I had to get out because I was shaking, and he said it was a safety hazard.
Oh, right. Perils of being a photographer.
Yeah.
Always try to get the next best shot.
Yeah. So that inspired the name.
What is the name?
The name is Cold, Wet, and Loving It. Because despite all of the physical discomfort, I still love this photo.
Yeah.
I have to say, I took that name from you. That is your title from, what, New Zealand? New Zealand photo essay. I was broke. I don't have money. Because I had just bought this camera.
Which was?
Which is the Fujifilm X-T50.
Yes, which she did a review of, so click on the link above to see that review. So tell me about the visual techniques you used to make this photo, because I think that although the silhouette is the most obvious one that jumps out, it seems like did more than that.
Right. So there were, of course, some conscious decisions and some that just happened that added to the photo. One of the conscious decisions was creating a little bit of motion blur in the waterfall, because with a higher shutter speed, you just couldn't see it well enough. It wasn't contrasting out by the rocks, and it just looked like dust specks, and I didn't like that. So I think this shutter speed is probably maybe 30th of a second, something like that. Also, I had to use my ISO actually to compensate for that, shooting into the light as well. And also, compression was a very conscious choice. I was shooting on a 27mm prime lens, so I didn't really have much control, but I used my positioning to get under this cliff. Oh, I don't know if it's called a cliff. Cave edge, to kind of create those layers and that stacking. And it removed the height of the cave, but it added a lot to the character, and it added a lot to just the visual kind of balance of the photo.
Yeah, I can see that in the top right, this blurry outcropping. It's subtle, but it's noticeable, particularly because it's near your main character, and your main character is very sharply outlined, and it juxtaposes really nicely.
Thank you. Also, the steam of all of the waterfalls, because
Why is there steam?
air drafting in from above us, cold air drafting in through the cave tunnels, and then the cold water. And I believe it was actually raining as well, so there was steam everywhere. You can kind of see that haziness at the top layers, which definitely brings out the silhouette, which I was not intentionally doing that.
In fact, I think it makes it a little bit ethereal, as if you're looking into the end of a lit tunnel, which in fact you are, except the tunnel is vertical. And that fog almost gives you the impression that it just extends off into infinity, which is really cool. So what did you learn about what matters to you when you made this photo and chose it?
I think I learned that I'm very willing to put aside comfort if it means I'm going to get this shot. This shot was taken at the very end of those long 5.5 hours, and so I don't regret it for even a moment, but I think I'm much more aware of that part.
Yeah.
Photography now.
Yeah, I think that's a really important lesson, that the photos you're able to make are going to be limited by what you're willing to do and where you're willing to go and how long you're willing to do it. Because you're right, some of the best work that we do comes while we're in major discomfort.
Or major frustration, like those bee eaters.
Or that, yeah. How do you think this photo is going to influence how you make photos in the future?
I think the silhouettes are definitely going to be used more. I really like, again, the anonymous feeling where it takes away the character, and yet you can still see emotion and the story, and kind of, there's a clear intention through this character. You can see that she's looking down, she's holding the rope, she has a purpose, she's trying to go down. And so that kind of, the challenge, creating emotion and story and intention without a face, which is where we get most of her, that's been a really interesting problem to solve. Layering as well has been a very important part of this photo, and I will definitely be using it more. The compression and scale are things that I'm definitely more aware of now, so I'll be trying to use those. And probably the fog, if I can find interesting things like fog or steam to kind of emphasize light or diffuse it.
Yeah, that's a great one.
I think that's it for my photo.
Yeah?
Do you want to go to yours?
Well, I have one more question for you about this one. What about this photo is meaningful to you that the viewer can't see?
The perseverance, for sure.
Of you or of the climber? Of the caver?
Well, the 5.5 hours were rough, but they were so worth it. And this photo means a lot to me. It reminds me of my own strength and stubbornness. So what is this photo about and why is it important to you?
Yeah. This photo is your grandmother and grandfather, my mother and father, David and Julie Pinn, who live in Florida. They are cleaning a table that we ate dinner on outside of their home. They like to cook and eat outside, which is something pretty unique to them. And not only does this photo remind me of that unique aspect of how they live, which is they love to be connected to nature, as you might be able to tell with some of the silhouettes here, which are trees, and there are hints of plants. Their house, as you know, is full of plants and fruits and vegetables and trees that they've planted over the many years. So not only does it have hints of that, it is also of them working as a team, which is something that as I get older, I appreciate more because I think it's pretty unique or uncommon for parents to work as a team or at least to be photographed. And that is something that they do really, really well. They complement each other really, really well. And they have very different personalities, as you know.
Yep.
And sometimes we wonder how they are so compatible, but it probably is because their personalities are so different. But here they are working in synchrony and doing something very meaningful to them. That's why this photo is so important to me. Visually,
What did you learn about what matters to you as a photographer as you were taking this photo or as you were finding it in your, I assume, hundreds of photos?
Yeah. One is that I really need to take more photos of my parents because they're getting older and we know and they know, not to be morbid, but the reality is that life goes on and they may not be around for very much longer. And so memories of them are increasingly important, and photographing them doing things that are important to them has become more important to me. And making this photo emphasized that to me even more because I could see the result that such a photo can have. And then the other thing that I'll talk about more later as well is that I shot this photo on my phone, and I don't like shooting photos on my phone because it removes so much of your control. But if you're able to set up your scene so that you don't need the gear to control aspects of your scene and instead use your position and angle and so forth to do that, then the phone can work. And it was the camera that was available. Would I have preferred to shoot it on my big fancy full frame? Yes, probably. But I was also just sitting there watching my parents, and so I planned to shoot a photo. But the scene was there, and so I learned to use the gear that I had and to appreciate having that gear, which was the phone.
Is there anything else about this photo that has sentimental value that you can't see?
Probably is the idea that, or the knowledge that they are in their happy place. So as I mentioned, they're in the backyard of their house, which is full of plants and fruits and vegetables and things that they've planted themselves, and they take care of themselves. Mom waters them every day. Dad chops down old trees to make base for new trees. And so that's a context that is hinted at, but it's not fully seen in this photo. And that's an important thing to them, and so it's an important thing to me, but you can't see it here.
I think you can see a little bit of the teamwork, but the home and the everything else that you talk about is harder to see.
Next, most important photo of 2025. What is this one? What is it called? And why did you choose it?
This photo is a photo of a little girl in an aquarium who's highlighted by a spotlight above her.
Where was this aquarium?
It was in Boston, and she's peering over the edge at actually penguins. At the penguin enclosure, I call this photo the edge of curiosity because I think the strongest visual element in terms of size is the railing edge, and she's peeking over it. And it's it's a very childlike, very characteristic moment. I was not planning on taking photos of people in an aquarium. A couple of my friends commented on that there. Why are you doing that? But she was sitting there for a couple of minutes just staring, and the only thing I could think of was every child has some barrier and they want to just look over it, and they're so curious. And you can see her parents off to frame left a little bit, and they were just letting her be a kid. They weren't pulling her off the edge, nothing. And I thought it was really cool.
So what visual techniques did you use to make this?
Of course, high contrast, and then the highlighting, again, the anonymous feeling, really see her face.
Did you have to change your position to center her in the frame?
I did not have to change my position. I did have to change my position to get the line to be parallel. to the bottom of the screen because she was angled away from me, and so I had to reach my arms out over the penguin enclosure,
Oh, you did?
dangle my camera precariously.
Could you see your screen when you were framing that?
No, I could not, but it didn't matter too much because the 27mm was way wide enough and I just crawled on. So really, in terms of framing, the only hard part was getting it to look like she was head on.
Right. That's interesting and that's cool. Sometimes you have to do those things to get the shot. That's great. How do you think making this photo might influence how you make photos in the future?
I think because of this photo, I started being conscious of how I want to take photos of children. That sounds weird, but in a way that conveys almost universal moments, kind of
Almost about what it means to be a child?
what it is to be a child, what it is to have that curiosity. To me, it's a reminder of not to lose that curiosity. Even though she was 6, maybe, I saw plenty of people doing the same thing, and they just weren't quite as brave about it.
That's wonderful. I love that. All right, last question. What about this photo is meaningful that the viewer can't see?
I think the most important thing to me was actually after this photo. As I mentioned, all of my friends were very confused at my pointing a camera at a child when
Instead of the penguin.
penguins and jellyfish and all of these fish around me. And then I showed them the photo and they understood. That really enforced the idea that as a photographer, we're not even just capturing memories, we're telling stories and we're conveying emotion and moments even if they're not personal.
Right, and sometimes the story, maybe the most important story, is not the most obvious one. Where at the aquarium, the most obvious one appeared to be the penguins, but you saw something else that was worth telling. And the next one.
What is this photo about? Where was it? Who is this? And why do you like it?
Yeah, so this photo was taken here in Austin. It is at the Balloon Museum, and one of the exhibits at the Balloon Museum was a room that they kind of turned into a nightclub-ish, but it was a ball pit. You'll notice in the foreground all these balls. It's a huge ball pit that was lit with these spotlights and had these black balloons hanging from the ceiling that would go up and down. And the character in the photo is your mom. And the reason why this photo is important to me is because it reminds me that your mom is very playful. She is very young at heart and she's unafraid of literally throwing herself into things. She threw herself into this ball pit and swam around in this ball pit, and it's very your mom, and it's one of the things I love about her the most. And so this photo reminds me of how youthful she is in her soul. And the photo works visually because the high contrast of the spotlight against the very, very black balloon ceiling and the ball pit with all its little specular highlights creates this sort of otherworldly dimensional, and adds to this idea of exploration and being adventurous and going strange places, even though it is inside of a building. Within that context, it was a strange place. We'd never been in a ballroom whose ceiling was moving up and down. I guess you could call this a ballroom. And the shaft of light that's coming from that spotlight is coming down right next to her, and that leads the eye to her. And because she's partially occluded by the foreground, it adds to this sense of kind of mystery and exploration, which I really love. And it also has layers of light and layers of objects. That is something that I love to include in my photo.
Did you learn anything about your photography or about photos that you want to take in the future by taking this photo?
Yeah, I recognized that I could use light sources as leading lines. I'd always known and used light and shadow as compositional elements, but it was usually the light that was maybe being shaped by a window or a door or between two buildings that would create shafts of light that characters would walk through. In this one, the light source itself became a compositional element. It has a shape, and that was only possible because the air was full of fog. So you can actually see the shaft of light, which is really cool. But I'd never really thought about that. And I'd never really thought about what this scene gave, which was that you can use multiple shafts of light actually as layering. So yeah, I learned that, and it's something I'm now going to look for in the future, is how to use light sources themselves as compositional elements.
What about this photo has sentimental or personal meaning to you that wouldn't be obvious to a viewer?
That I'm also in the ball pit. I don't know if you can tell that. Maybe you might assume it, but you can't see it. I'm in the ball pit with with her. And in order to make this photo, I had to lie down in the ball to shoot up. And I had to shoot a few frames to get the composition I wanted, where I could see the foreground of balls, the midground of your mom, and then the layers of light that lead your eye back to the background. And so the thing that is important to me that you can't really see is that I get to play in these environments and explore these things with your mom, which is really important to me. We get into the honorable mentions. So we're going to start with one of Satara's. And Satara, what is this and what does it remind you of, and why is it an honorable mention?
This is a behind the scenes photo, actually from this chair, of Dad setting up the camera, is you guys, for our first Shoot for Meaning episode. We have big lighting mushroom and added this really cool contrast and this outlining, and it very much dominates the frame. For me, this photo is a little bit anxiety inducing because it makes me remember the anxiety of shooting our first episode, of having this big mushroom in my face.
And a camera. Yep.
It's no Shoot for Meaning. It's the start of sharing my photos and sharing my knowledge of photos.
Yeah, right. Through this channel, through this show, and what you'll talk about later through other channels as well. All right, let's talk about your second honorable mention. What is this?
Anwen. I think this was some fair of some kind, and she is holding my Fujifilm X250, and she had asked, hey, can I shoot photos? I want to try this. I want to learn. And I was over the moon. I think I started jumping up and down. Like, please let me teach you photography. Please, I would have so much fun. I want to teach you. And it's actually, this photo is the one and only photo that I have of someone using a camera to take a picture of me as I'm taking a picture of them, in this case with my phone, other than Dad. I have probably dozens of photos of Dad doing the same thing, which those kind of remind me of being his mentee student. And so really this pose and the holding up the camera it reminds me that I have something to teach to people.
You do. You certainly do. Yeah. And hello to Anwen.
Hi, Anwen. Thank you for letting me use that photo.
Yeah.
How about your honorable mentions?
Yeah, so this is my first honorable mention. This is of course, you and Nikhil and your mom, the three most important people to me in my life. And this was shot in Japan, just recently, actually, within the last couple weeks. It was an attempt to use frames within a frame, because there's actually more than one here, in a way that includes all three of you. Of course, Nikhil is there, Mom is there, they're framed by your legs and torso, and you are there doing a thing that's very quintessentially you, which has become a tradition of ours. Wherever we go, Satara will cartwheel. Actually, her mom will as well. And this one reminds me of the dynamic we have as a family. Nikhil is very patient to let us photograph him to be a character in our scenes.
He's a model.
He doesn't always want to be there, but he does it. Same with Mom. Mom doesn't always want to be there, but she does it. But she enjoys helping us set photos up. She's been doing that since we went to Africa for the first time and when we went to New Zealand, and she's really become sort of almost like a photographic director. This is my second honorable mention. It is your mom and I looking out over the southern seas in Antarctica on our voyage there at the very beginning of the year. Actually, we were there during New Year. And the reason why this photo honorable mention is that it reminds me of the great adventures that we go on, especially the part of it that is your mom leading us on these adventures. She's always the one who thinks of and imagines the places we could and should go, and they're always mind-blowing. And this was the seventh continent, as you mentioned, and a lot of the time we actually spent there was in transit on the water, so this was a quiet moment during one of those transits. It was a relatively calm one, fortunately, for those of us who get seasick very easily. But what this photo does for me is that it shows the kind of the calmer side, the calmer moments in between the very active moments and moments that your mom and I share. I think you and Nikhil were in the other room. Mom was reading on her Kindle, which is another very quintessential mom thing to do as she's taking a break, and I shot a self-portrait, group self-portrait without her knowing, because she might not have been reading on her Kindle if she did. But it also reminds me of the life that we have together and the things that are important to us, which is to explore the wider world and to have these adventures. And so that's why this photo is an honorable mention.
Is it unusual for you to take self or group portraits?
Yes. Don't take a lot of self-portraits. Think as a photographer, you
The other side of the lens.
The other side of the lens. And maybe there's some argument to be made that the people who don't like to be in front of the lens find a way to stay on the other side, which is definitely me, actually. But I thought this one was an important moment to capture for memory because it means a lot to me.
Do you have any closing statements, closing notes for the end of 2025 journey?
Yeah, I have a few. The number of photos I took in 2025 compared to the number of photos that were actually reasonably good is ridiculous. I shot probably over 30,000, if not 40,000 photos in 2025 alone. After I graded my photos, only 3 made it to 5 stars, which are the 3 that I shared today. At first, I thought that was very discouraging because maybe that just means I can't make good photos. But I think what's probably more true is that it's really hard to make photos that meet the criteria of being both visually compelling and also meaningful, and the visual techniques that I used actually added to the meaning of the photo. And to get all of those things to integrate in one photo is extremely hard and exceedingly rare, but also worth trying for. So that's the first thing that I wanted to mention that I learned from 2025 that I took away from 2025. The second one that I actually already mentioned was that 2 of those 3 photos I made on my phone. At the end of 2025, I shot in JPEG, and our last trip to Japan is actually inspired by you because you were just shooting in your Fujifilm. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to shoot JPEG as well. Just let the camera apply its look and don't worry about editing. Don't worry about processing. And just think about the shots that I wanted to take and not the fact that every shot I took was going to add more time in the future. So that was amazing. And the other thing I did in Japan that I've never done was I took 1 lens. But I left behind all my other lenses and decided I would be brave and stick to 1 focal length and learn how to shoot that focal length. And I loved it, except for the fact that that lens is not compatible with my camera and froze all the time. But other than that, it was amazing to shoot manual focus, even manual aperture. The last thing I will say about what I learned in 2025 is really reflective of what I've already talked about, which is that to honor the people in your life, the people who are important to you, who you love, and you want to remember always, and you want other people to remember them, photograph them doing the things that are important to them. And by that, I mean, go ahead and shoot, the group selfies standing in front of, your vacation destination. Go ahead and shoot the photos of sitting down around the dinner table, but also photograph them doing the thing that matter to them. If they love fishing, photograph them fishing. If they love bowling, photograph them bowling. Those are the things that they're going to want to be remembered by, and they're the things that you're going to want to remember them by. So photograph them doing those things. I definitely learned that from photographing grandma and grandpa. Just doing the simple act of cleaning a table, because that is something they love to do, is they love to do things together. Okay, and that is it for me for the closing notes. I have a couple questions for you, and then I'll ask you some questions. What are your closing notes?
I think I shot this year more than I have ever shot in my life. With the wonderful addition of the XT50, I was able to shoot in way more places, in way more settings, with way more people. I shot probably hundreds of people, at least dozens of events, I think 5 travel destinations, and pretty much anything I could think of to shoot. I was there with my camera, and I realized that I am able to find value for myself and for other people in almost any scene, whether it's teaching Anwen or any of my other photography friends, or whether it's making memories for them, whether it's capturing things that they've never seen themselves do, or just keeping those memories for them. I can bring value through those photos for people other than me. The little things like the light that people don't normally notice, the shadows, the contrasts, the motion, which people usually ignore, actually. This was also my first year sharing my photos with other people who aren't family.
Yeah, that was a big step.
First, I got Instagram for the first time, which was very new to me. I had no idea what I wanted. I was completely lost, but the idea that I can reach people that I don't see almost ever, or people that used to be a part of my life and aren't for different circumstances, can still be connected, is really important to me. And then, of course, Shoot for Meaning. We get a huge reach with this that I would never be able to get with my photos without YouTube. And also, I think I've submitted 7 total of my photos in 2 separate photo competitions. The first one was over the summer, which was part of actually a psychology camp to push my boundaries. I was terrified. I submitted, I think, 6 photos from Imeri. And then just yesterday, I submitted Cold, Wet, and Loving It caving photo to a international caving photography competition. Hopefully that one does well, but I have no idea. And the big thing for me was I realized that I have my own style this year. I have a very distinct style I don't see in almost anyone else, and not just visual style, but also I would say an emotional style, kind of what I shoot and why I shoot it, which is a part of photography that people don't really talk about.
Yeah, the fact that your photos tell more about the photographer in many ways than what is in the photo itself.
The things that you find important are what you're going to photograph.
That's right.
And whether that's the people that you photograph or the things that they're doing, there's always a value in it.
Then I have a few questions for you.
Okay.
What do you think are the most important things you learned about photography, writ large, and about yourself in 2025 that you will take forward with you in 2026?
I think I've already kind of mentioned a lot of these. The things that I've learned about myself are that I am very stubborn and I will get the shot that I want, even if it means holding up the rest of the class or the caving group or whatever. I'm gonna get that shot. What I learned about photography is definitely more emotional value. Talking about photography in this very philosophical way has made me much more conscious of the emotional attachment I have to photography as a hobby and as a purpose, as a goal that I have. And it's made me realize that it's not easy teaching people how to take photos or trying to make them understand that I can't keep all 872 photos. What about you? Same question.
I'd have to say it's very much of a reflection of what you just said, which is that this year was the first year I saw you develop your own style. And I think you mentioned, perhaps in a previous episode, but definitely to me, that a big milestone for you is buying your own camera. And what that did for you was made you feel that you were committed to photography in and of yourself, apart from the fact that that's something that your dad does. And that is a huge milestone. And I watched you do that. And I wouldn't say change, but add on being a teacher to being a student, which actually all of us are students, but not all of us are teachers. And seeing you change into or grow into a teacher was, to me, because it means that you will take something that's important and share it and make it meaningful to others, and you will just grow meaning. And that is the name of our show. It is the reason we do this. And that's something that was new to me. And that is something that I know I'm going to see more of in 2026. And that's what I look forward to most. And wherever I can teach you how to teach is probably where I'm going to focus a lot, so that you can teach more, and maybe then you can teach them to teach others. What do you think you're going to explore about your photography in 2026?
I think I'm going to try and explore portrait photography. It's hard with scheduling because there's an extra person involved that I don't have good control of their schedule, and Mom doesn't either, because Nikhil doesn't want to be my model. He's also not here, but that's a separate story. I want to do portrait photography. I grew up with the camera outside, very much only shooting with direct light or natural light. I had almost no control of lighting for all of my photography.
Also known as found light.
And so I want to know what I can do with light that I can manipulate, and a place where I can't manipulate other things like exotic animals that we see. What about you? What are you gonna...
First of all, shout out to Nikhil in Japan. That's why he's not here. So what am I going to explore in 2026? I think I'm going to explore constraints. I did a bit of that. I started with that, with the JPEGs and with the Prime, and I found that it made me more deliberate about decision making. And so I'm going to explore camera systems, methodologies, processes, situations that create a lot of constraints and that force me to be more creative, because creativity is really about problem solving under tough constraints. And I think that's an idea I'm going to explore more in 2026. And that wraps it up for our most important photos of 2025. If you like this kind of content, the stuff that we talk about, what we believe is important in photography, and you want to engage with us, please subscribe, like the show, share it with your friends, tell them about it, and we'll see you in the next episode.